Hello aqua friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole and today we are going to do some autumn trees, and we're going to do it from the perspective of being in the forest floor and looking up through the canopy, and we're going to surround it. Now I do want to show you my samples of how I'm going to go about doing this after practicing. My first attempt was wetting the paper completely and dropping in blues and oranges. I didn't like that effect because it became a little muddy in some areas. So then the second time I did it, I decided to just drop in my oranges. And then this was all white. And then I painstakingly used a very tiny brush to put in the blue sky, and it kind of looks pretty cool. I kind of like the effect, but then I came up with another idea of doing this in two steps and saving a lot of time. So I did drop in some blues randomly, and then I let that paper dry completely, and then I dropped in my oranges, and it's a very similar effect. And it is much faster than painting in these tiny little areas. Plus, this looks more kind of like puzzle pieces, and the lines are more harsh than doing it this way. So let's get started. First off, I'm just going to wet my paper, and we'll work with just the blue sky. And even though I'm not going to put the blue everywhere, I will wet the whole thing because I'm not sure where exactly I want to drop stuff in. Definitely kind of like in the middle here where the sky is, because it's like from the perspective of you looking up through the trees. It's handy to have some spray bottles too. I'm going to wet my paints here. I do like using a warm blue for the sky. It's so pretty. And I think it looks good with the warm reds and oranges. So just very loosely. And you don't need a reference photo for this. I was kind of like looking through pictures and stuff on the internet, and there was a couple of snapshots of this sort of perspective, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Let me give it a go for a painting. Now you could spray the blues so they don't have hard edges. You can drop in some too, and that's where I have these darker spots, which I think is kind of pretty cool. So I could also do that and kind of, you know, drop in some spots here. Now I do have to remember to leave some some spots for our oranges and reds, and so I think that's it. Actually, I think that's is gonna kind of stop there and let it dry, and then when we come back we'll put in the beautiful orange colors. Okay, so now that that has dried, it's been a couple days and my masking fluid lifted up a little bit, so just pressing that back down. Now I'm going to be using some yellows, oranges, and reds, and really you could use any colors you want. I have cool yellows and a warmer yellow, and these two here are actually opaque in nature, because this is the cadmium yellow and this is a cadmium orange, which I used in my last painting I did, but you never know, maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. But for sure, I do want to use all these different yellows I have. And you could really notice how warm this one is compared to the lighter yellow. And of course, like I said, in watercolor, we do work from light to dark. So some of the colors that I'll be using initially will be that lightest yellow. This orange that I have right here I'm mixing up is transparent pyrrole orange, permanent rose mixed in there. I got two different reds on each side, but either one will do. Now notice all these white spots areas is kind of like where I'm going to try to focus putting in the foliage. I want sharp edges, but I want some to blend nicely. And I have a couple ideas in mind for using for the brushes that I'm going to use. So I have a nice thick quill brush. My Fumi brush is a number 8. I do love dagger brushes for doing foliage. So this is a really nice big thick one too, that does hold a nice amount of water. So that's kind of in the works here. Now I'm going to spritz my paper kind of where I have these whiter spots. Now, I might leave some open spaces like that. I kind of like this lacy effect, especially around some of these blue areas. So those blue spots I did in the first layer kind of shine through. That's actually really pretty. And as you kind of work around your paper, you can rotate it around if you need to. So I'm just using water, getting in some water here. I do love how the colors bleed together. I think that's so pretty. Start with the water. God, I love this orange. It's so pretty. Maybe go with a little bit of a lighter yellow. Add some more spritzes here. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. You're just kind of making little patterns and varying up your colors. And these eventually will look like trees once we get, well, the tree trunks in. So just have fun with it, guys. Enjoy the process. With too much water, you could always sop it up with your brush like I'm doing, in a piece of paper towel or a rag. You can also pick up your board and move the paints that way too. That's always a fun thing to do. So where I have these white spaces in between my blue, I'm just making these little lines. I charge in a different color here and there, switching up my orange, my yellowish color to darker yellow. And then maybe once I get around this corner, we'll add some orange. Just fun, guys. No stress. Fun, easy project. Now I have a whole bunch of white here. Where are they going to meet? And as you work around these corners, like this is pretty dry now, so I'm going to respritz this section. Kind of wet it here a little bit. Clean water. So maybe this red that I have here, I'll make it go into orange. Switch up my colors, change it to yellow. And on the edges, I'm noticing I'm making a lot of little tiny marks to kind of represent the leaves. So it looks more natural. Now, some of the whiter areas that's mixed with the blues, that could be clouds as well. So I don't have to, randomly, because I don't think a tree would be that skinny. You know what I mean? So just use your best judgment. I kind of like how the sky goes lighter and then darker in areas. And if you are going to go over the blue, I suggest you use the darker colors like the oranges and the reds, because the yellow is going to kind of look green a little bit, possibly, if you go over the... That's why I'm kind of like sticking to more oranges and reds along the edges here. Back to the beginning a bit, where I started. It's getting in a little bit of this whiteness I have. Could put in a few trees. Start with my yellow, but then switch to these darker oranges. So that looks pretty cool. Now another thing that we could do is a couple of splatters to kind of look like maybe some of the leaves are falling off the trees and they're in the sky. Not sure. Let's see how that would look with this brush. Ooh, I think I'm getting it on my face instead of the paper. Okay, let's see here. Maybe I will use this one. Now I'm not going to use yellow because, like I said, it'll look kind of greenish on that blue. So I'm going to stick to these really vibrant oranges and the reds here, but I don't know. Make it a little more watery. especially in some of this that's still drying, because then they soften, create little blooms. It's kind of pretty. Just a couple. I don't want to overdo it, but kind of think it looks cool. Now I'm going to let this whole thing dry, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in the tree branches, and I will see if I want to extend some of these leaves more, kind of like how it's looking right now, but we'll see once I get the trees actually in there. So look how gorgeous this dried, guys. And just wanted to show you what I did. I lightly took a pencil, and our focal point is going to be in the middle here because we're looking up through the trees. So you kind of have to face all of your tree trunks in that direction so that the perspective is correct. So I just kind of lightly drew them in. I'll have some trees that are bare too with no leaves on them, just for some interest here, kind of reaching for the sky. And the colors that I'm going to use is some gray of gray, and then this Daniel Smith blue is the lunar blue that I'm using. So the same thing, I'm just going to kind of go around the paper to draw in all of my tree trunks. I'm using a script liner brush, but this, guys, is a huge script liner brush because I want to really load up the brush and have thicker on the bottom, because as the perspective, it'll get thinner on the top. And I'm left-handed. I have to constantly remind myself to start here and go around so I don't smear my work. I was very tempted to start right here. So if you're right-handed, of course, you would start here and you would work your way around, which means I have to be big and bold and brave because I'm going to do one that has no leaves on it. All right, so. And notice how with less pressure, I could really get some thin lines in there. I could always add more branches. I'm just kind of trying to start somewhere, so. You could also use your hand to rest your painting arm on. You know what I realized, guys, just now is I started in the right spot, but I'm rotating it in the wrong direction because I'm left-handed. I should be going this way. Ay, ay, ay. So for interest, it's also good to vary the thickness of your tree trunks. I mean, some trees will be skinnier, some will be thinner. I tell you, after this all turned out really nicely, and this was a pleasure to do the blues and then putting in all the foliage, this is the most nerve-wracking because you're at the end of the painting and you want it to turn out so bad and you don't want to wreck your painting. I think I might want to which would be a great idea, is to just practice doing trees, as far as like the branches and whatnot, and just try to loosen up with my paintbrush by making a whole bunch of sticks. I feel like I am loosening up as I'm going along, and I'm being not as tight with my strokes, kind of trying to have fun with it. It's gonna be dry now. So now that you're done, you guys can go ahead and sign your paintings. Take off the tape. Seeing that white edge is always so much fun and rewarding when you're done painting. I really like the way this turned out. So there you have it. Where in my experimentation, I went from this, which is pretty muddy and not very pretty, to extremely complicated and time-consuming because I painted in all these little blue splots, and it does kind of make it look disconnected a little bit, to this is a small version of this. Let me know if you guys are going to give it a try, and I'll see you next time.